king of German mercenaries.
Chapter 244 Rough treatment. After entering the Emperor's temporary residence, Marin quickly brought two Mongolian doctors, carrying medicine boxes, into the room where the Emperor pretended to be sick. Originally, Marin thought that the Emperor must be fine. However, after entering the door, he saw the Emperor with a painful face. "There's no outsider here, why are you pretending?" Marin thought speechlessly. However, after getting closer, he found that the Emperor was really in pain. It turned out that the dagger that the fanatical young man used to chop at the Emperor was hidden in his boots, and it was unknown whether it was infected with athlete's foot fungus. Therefore, the Emperor's arm did not heal after being cut and was infected. Therefore, after Marin arrived, although it had been 5 days, the Emperor's wound had not healed and had become inflamed. Fortunately, although the wound was inflamed, it did not cause a high fever or other symptoms. Otherwise, the Emperor might really be finished. When the Emperor saw Marin coming, he glared at him unhappily. If it wasn't for Marin's idea, he wouldn't have suffered this. Of course, if he didn't do this, the Emperor wouldn't be able to control Graubünden. If the people of Graubünden resisted fiercely and dragged the Swiss to help, then there would be no need to think about it. Marin did not say much, but simply checked the Emperor's left arm and found that the wound was not serious and did not hurt the vital parts. However, the wound began to become inflamed. But if it was not controlled well, in this era, it could really cost the Emperor his life. Fortunately, the Emperor met Marin this time, and the Mongolian doctor he brought with him. Marin turned around and asked Marin and Bader in Chinese, "Can you guys reopen the wound and remove the necrotic part?" "No problem, it just hurts a little." Turning around, Marin told the Emperor his idea, and the Emperor asked in surprise, "You mean, the wound is infected?" "Infected with what?" Of course, the Emperor didn't know what the germs were. So, Marin simply explained it in a way that was in line with medieval customs. It is an evil dark element. Once it enters a wound, it can easily cause inflammation and swelling. If it is left unchecked for too long, it may cause a high fever and lead to death. The Emperor had also heard of such deaths. In the Middle Ages, many nobles died of inflammation and high fever after being injured. Therefore, the Emperor knew that Marin was not talking nonsense. "So, can the two doctors you brought really cure it?" "That's absolutely fine. But, Your Majesty, this process may be a little painful." "It's okay, as long as it can be cured." The Emperor was also afraid of death. Between temporary pain and death, the Emperor naturally chose to suffer the pain temporarily. Marin found a clean towel and handed it to the Emperor, asking him to bite it to avoid biting his tongue. However, unexpectedly, Marin said disdainfully, "It doesn't need to be that troublesome." "Won't it hurt?" Marin asked. "He can't feel it." After that, under the confused gazes of Marin and the Emperor's guards, Marin very merry hit the Emperor on the back of the neck with a beautiful knife, knocking the Emperor unconscious. Sure enough, it's the Mongolian doctor's method, simple and rough, but very effective. Marin quickly asked Khan to stop several royal guards who rushed up to stop Marin. "Don't worry, His Majesty just fainted temporarily. The wound will be treated later, and the doctor is afraid that His Majesty will not be able to bear the pain, so he knocked His Majesty unconscious first." Several guards were a little skeptical, but when they saw Marin and Bader take out the scalpels for cutting rotten flesh and start cutting the Emperor's wounds, which looked like they were treating an illness, they temporarily stopped attacking. Moreover, even if they wanted to rush over, they couldn't get through Khan's iron gate. "You two, please clean the scalpel with alcohol." "Oh." Marin, who had just made 2 cuts, took out the alcohol bottle, cleaned the knife with alcohol, and started cutting the rotten flesh again. The 2 Mongolian doctors were very skilled in this technique. They often cut carrion for people or animals on the grasslands. So, when cutting carrion, they were very fast and cut it very cleanly, but they rarely cut normal good meat. Then, Marin took over from the 2 Mongolian doctors and sprinkled some gunpowder powder on the new wounds. "Earl Marin, what are you doing?" asked Captain Tranmere curiously. "Disinfection." Marin replied without turning his head. Then he found an open flame and ignited the gunpowder on the fresh wound on the Emperor's left arm. Swish, a burst of fire lit up, and even if there were any remaining germs, they would have been killed. However, this process is also very painful. It is a high-temperature burn, and the skin can be burned black. Therefore, the Emperor who was knocked unconscious before woke up from the pain and began to scream. But before he could even scream, Marin used a perfect knife to knock him unconscious again. After the gunpowder was disinfected, Malin asked Morigen and Bader to clean the wound with alcohol first, then apply the effective wound medicine commonly used on the grassland to the emperor's wound, and began to bandage the emperor's new wound with clean boiled gauze packed in a leather bag. In the following time, Morigen and Bader took turns guarding the emperor's bed. Once the emperor showed signs of waking up, they would knock him out again. Their method was quick, painless, and left no scars. Khan, who was standing by, was full of admiration for Morigen and Bader's methods of knocking people unconscious. Khan was also a professional at knocking people unconscious and taking them away. However, Khan often used too much force, causing the people who were knocked unconscious to have neck pain for several days. Morigen and Bader, two Mongolian doctors, had much better force-generating skills than Khan. They could knock people unconscious without using too much force, causing neck pain or even injury. In this way, a day later, two Mongolian doctors finally made the emperor sober up. After waking up, the emperor was so angry that he cursed, "Marin, you bastard, what kind of doctor did you invite? You treat me so rudely. I want. Alright, your majesty, as long as the disease is cured, don't worry too much about the process. Although the two doctors under my command are a bit barbaric and rough, the treatment effect is still good." Sure enough, looking at the wound, although only 1 day had passed, the emperor's wound had basically healed and there was no sign of redness or swelling. Is it really effective? Of course, just wait and see. A few days later, the emperor was pleasantly surprised to find that his wound had healed more than half, and there was no sign of redness, swelling or inflammation. However, recalling the horrible experience of the treatment, the emperor was still very scared when he saw the two bearded Mongolian doctors, Morigen and Bader. Although he was afraid that Morigen and Bader would knock him unconscious again, the emperor still attached great importance to his treatment this time. Therefore, the emperor specifically asked Marin for the treatment method. Because, in this era, if you are injured, there is a high chance of infection and death. After many battles, not many soldiers died on the battlefield, but many died of wound inflammation after the war. Therefore, this treatment method is very important. Marin doesn't need to say much about cutting the rotten meat, just mentioning it once is enough. However, Marin emphasized that the knife for cutting meat must be smoked with fire or boiled in boiling water. In this regard, the court doctor arranged by the emperor to study with Marin did not seem to take it seriously, and Marin was helpless. Then, Marin also emphasized the importance of using gunpowder powder to burn wounds. Although it is possible to clean it with alcohol alone, alcohol can only clean the wound on the surface. If it is a little deeper, alcohol will not be able to reach it. Although gunpowder is very rough to clean the wound, it can directly burn the epidermis. At least, the bacteria on the skin are killed. Its effect is much stronger than that of alcohol. However, the process is very painful. Then, clean it with alcohol or strong liquor, and it will be almost the same. Marin had no idea how to prepare the golden medicine. Even if he told the emperor's court doctor the recipe, it would be useless. Because the main ingredient of the golden medicine was a herb from the Mongolian grasslands, which was not found in Europe. Therefore, Marin was powerless to do anything about it. Finally, it is the gauze wrapping. Marin doesn't need to explain this process. Any military doctor will know it better than Marin. However, Marin particularly emphasized that the gauze must be boiled in boiling water. Chapter 245 Conflict is inevitable. After Marin and Maximilian I's court doctor finished talking about the key points of wound treatment, the emperor soon called him over. When he arrived at the room where the emperor pretended to be sick, Marin saw Maximilian I frowning. "Your Majesty, do you have something to ask me?" "Yes, Count Marin. I have issued an edict announcing the recognition of your title of Count of East Frisia." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Marin finally had a legal status and was no longer a tyrant. A tyrant is a dictator who seizes power through a coup or other violent means. Generally speaking, a tyrant does not gain power legitimately and is not recognized by the secular world. In fact, Marin, under the banner of the heir of the Bloch family, was not a tyrant in the East Frisian county. But the problem was that the Bloch family was not recognized by the Holy Roman Empire at the beginning, but was just a tribal force wandering on the border of the Holy Roman Empire. On the contrary, the Sexna family declared their submission to the empire in 1464, and was officially canonized as count by Maximilian I's father Frederick III, becoming a noble accepted by all countries. Therefore, from the perspective of the East Frisian Empire, Marin is not a tyrant, he just took back the throne of his ancestors. But from the perspective of the empire, the Bloch family has never been recognized by the empire. According to the law, the Sexner family is the first recognized ruling family of the East Frisian Empire. So, in this calculation, Marin has become a tyrant again. But after the emperor finished the previous sentence, he suddenly made a turn, and Marin felt something was wrong. But what? The Duke of Saxony's foreign minister in Innsbruck resolutely refuses to recognize your legal status. They insist that you are the tyrant of East Frisia. Ah! How could they not give face to your majesty? Marin was a little surprised. Ordinary nobles still give me face, even if it's just on the surface. But the Saxon nobles are too powerful. They can completely ignore me. In fact, I owe the Duke of Saxony a big favor. Maximilian I was also a little helpless. At the beginning, after his father-in-law, Charles the Bold, died in battle, in order to prevent the Habsburg family from obtaining all the territory of the Duchy of Burgundy, the French began to incite the main part of the Duchy of Burgundy, that is, the western half of the Duchy of Burgundy close to the Paris Basin, the later Burgundy region, and the Netherlands to seek independence. Later, most of the main part of the Duchy of Burgundy, with the military support of Charles VIII, successfully broke away from the Duchy of Burgundy and joined France. Even the Netherlands was once very dangerous. Even Maximilian I himself was imprisoned in the Palace of Ghent by the Dutch Parliament. In the end, it was Emperor Frederick III who asked Duke Albrecht of Saxony to lead a large army to the Netherlands to rescue Maximilian I and put down the rebellion in Flanders. Maximilian I also promised the Duke of Saxony that Friesland would be given to him personally. Therefore, Maximilian I owed the Duke of Saxony a great favor. Moreover, in the imperial diet, Maximilian I also needed the nobles of Saxony to speak for him. Therefore, even if the Duke of Saxony did not accept the emperor's order, the emperor would not be able to turn his face. So, Your Majesty, what should I do? Marin was also troubled by such a complicated situation. If possible, Marin was not willing to fight with the Saxon family. When you return, be prepared for the battle. You are a military genius, and I believe you can repel the Saxon attack. As long as you repel the Saxon attack, I can mediate the situation. Okay. Marin was helpless. It seemed that the Duke of Saxony had set his sights on East Frisia. He had made up his mind that this time, he must deal with the Saxons and hurt and scare them. Historically, it was because Edisard I defeated the coalition forces of Duke George of Saxony that the Saxons were forced to recognize the independence of the county of East Frisia. His military power was stronger than that of Edisard, so there was no reason why he could not defeat the Duke of Saxony. Calculating the time, it is now mid to late May. Even if the Duke of Saxony wants to take action, he will have to prepare for several months. Prince George has also seen Marin's strength. Therefore, if the other side wants to attack, tens of thousands of people will definitely not be enough, at least 20,000 troops are needed. However, it would take several months for the Saxons to gather an army of 20,000, and they would need a huge amount of food. Therefore, Marin judged that even if the Saxons wanted to send troops, they should do so after the autumn harvest when food was most abundant. Marin was not afraid of fighting the Saxons. He was just very worried that the war would cause a serious loss of population in East Frisia. In addition, the Saxons might rob food in the countryside. Therefore, Marin planned to ask the manors under his name to transport most of the grain into the city after returning, and only keep the grain needed for daily life in the manor to avoid being robbed during the Saxon advance. In addition, each manor had dug a hidden basement in advance. Even if the Saxon army passed by, they would at most take away the food on the surface. The hidden food could still feed the farmers afterwards. Of course, it would be better for Marin to send troops to directly fight against the main force of Saxony and try to defeat it quickly. In this way, the damage caused by the Saxons to the East Frisian county can be minimized. However, to confront the Saxon army head-on, Marin can only rely on the more than 5,000 regular troops under his command. As for the thousands of militiamen recruited locally in East Frisia, they can be used to defend the city, but it is a bit demanding to use them to confront the Saxons head-on. Therefore, this time when he returned, Marin planned to continue to expand the army and increase the number of regular troops by several thousand. In this way, even if the Saxons brought 20,000 troops, Marin would have enough troops to fight head-on. After all, Marin's army all adopted the Spanish phalanx, which was very suitable for head-on. As for the cavalry, Marin planned to use mostly Blackshirt knights. To this end, he also planned to expand the number of Blackshirt knights to 800. The reason why Marin developed the Black Knights was for the Saxon plate knights. Saxony was a country of knights, and because of its strong economy, the Saxons could also train more expensive plate knights. When fighting, the Saxons could easily pull out thousands of plate knights to form a steel torrent to attack the enemy. If it were an ordinary country's army, it would be easy to be overwhelmed by the Saxons' luxurious knights. But Marin's army, mainly the Spanish phalanx, was not afraid of the knights' charge at all. Because, in addition to the sharp muskets, the Spanish phalanx also had an important characteristic, which was, they loved to dig trenches. The Spanish phalanx infantry loved to dig trenches in front of the formation, mainly to prevent the enemy cavalry from charging. If the enemy rushed to the front of the formation and the horses fell into the trenches, the impact of the charge would be immediately neutralized. What Marin is best at is commanding his men to dig 2 trenches to trap the knights. Therefore, Marin is not afraid of the knights' charge at all. However, the Spanish phalanx was afraid of artillery fire, and the Saxons were wealthy and had more artillery. Therefore, Marin needed to send cavalry to destroy the enemy's artillery positions. If we send ordinary cavalry, it would be like delivering food to thousands of Saxon knights. But if we use the wretched Blackshirt knights, it will be different. The Blackshirt knights could easily ride their horses to the flank of the enemy artillery position, then draw their guns and shoot at the enemy artillery, trying to kill the enemy's gunners. Although the Saxons were equipped with many artillery pieces, they had very few muskets, and had no means of countering the Black Knights. Although they might be equipped with some weapons such as crossbows, that was not a problem. As long as the Black Knights wore breastplates and helmets, they could minimize casualties. Because, although breastplates could not stop guns and cannons, they could stop ordinary crossbows without any problem. Another great advantage of the Blackshirt Knights is that they are not afraid of the enemy's plate-armored knights chasing them. If the Saxon knights underestimated the Blackshirt knights and sent plate-armored knights to chase them, it would be exactly what Marin wanted. The Blackshirt knights were originally experts at fighting plate-armored knights. As long as the opponent dared to catch up, the Blackshirt knights would be able to beat the opponent to pieces. When the plate knight meets the Blackshirt knight, he can neither chase nor run away, and he has no ranged weapons to fight back. If he dares to chase him, he will be fooled and killed by the Blackshirt knight. With this thought, Marin felt relieved. Now, he only needed to go back and make preparations, waiting for the Saxons to gather their troops and attack. As for him, he only needed to train his troops and make the corresponding preparations. Chapter 246 Warning Milan. As they were talking, the captain of the royal guard, Tranmere, suddenly came in, as if he had something to report. Tranmere looked at Marin, who was chatting with the emperor, then looked at the emperor, and found that the emperor did not mean to ask Marin to avoid it, so he reported directly, "Your Majesty, news came from France that Louis XII has arrived in Lyon in southeastern France with 20,000 French troops." However, they stopped there. Oh. Stopped. Why? It seems that they are recruiting more Swiss mercenaries. Louis XII feels that 20,000 troops are not enough and seems to want to recruit another 10,000 troops. Not enough? Does he really think I'm going back to Italy? I don't even want to go to Italy, so 10,000 people are enough for him. In fact, the French army was very powerful, with plate-armored knights roaming the European continent, and the other 10,000 people were the most powerful infantry in Europe, Swiss mercenaries. Therefore, 20,000 people were definitely enough. However, Louis XII was still recruiting. Obviously, Marin guessed that Louis XII was not interested in the emperor, but in the territory of Italy. As a liberal arts student who has studied European history, Marin naturally knows that in the original history, Louis XII sent troops to Milan and Naples, and both were successful. If he had not been defeated by Spain in Naples, Louis XII would have really dominated Italy. The only thing to blame is that the Sforza family is too capable. Over the years, under Sforza's diligent governance, the Duchy of Milan has developed agriculture, and its industry and commerce are also very strong. It can be said that the Duchy of Milan is one of the richest regions in Italy. If Venice had not been richer due to its commercial advantages, Milan would have been the richest region in Italy. The Sforza family ruled Milan and should be considered a tyrant. Because the father of Duke Sforza was originally a mercenary general, who forcibly ascended to the position of Duke of Milan by force and by marrying the illegitimate daughter of the Duke of Milan, who was originally extinct. According to the plan of the Visconti family, which was originally extinct, it was intended to let the Duke of Orleans at the time, the father of Louis XII, inherit. However, the Milanese did not agree at the time and formed a republic themselves, but it was later annexed by the Sforza family. The Sforza family also knew that they had not come to power in a legitimate way, so they tried their best to please the people and built water conservancy projects in the Duchy of Milan, which led to great development of Milan's agriculture. Milan's handicraft industry was also very developed. Very early on, Milan's plate armor became a famous product that European knights flocked to. Milan's handicraft industry in other industries was also very developed. In the Middle Ages, European cities were mainly composed of nobles, soldiers, craftsmen and merchants. The nobles accounted for a small proportion of the population, and the number of soldiers was not the mainstream. Although there were many merchants, they were not the most important. Generally speaking, the citizens in medieval cities were mainly craftsmen and their families. Milan, with a population of 100,000, ranks first in the Holy Roman Empire. It can be seen that there are many craftsmen and merchants in Milan. The population of Western European cities in this era can directly reflect whether the city's economy is prosperous. Ghent, the most prosperous city under the control of the Habsburg family, has a population of 75,000, ranking second in the entire Holy Roman Empire. The reason why Ghent has so many people is that Ghent is the wool textile center in Flanders, so there are naturally many handicraftsmen, and the taxes provided to the Habsburg family are also very high. At the same time, Austria had a population of only 20,000. With such a prosperous city and such a developed agriculture, it would be strange if the Duchy of Milan was not coveted. Coincidentally, the new French King Louis XII took advantage of the fact that his father was chosen as the Duke of Milan and brought up the pass to demand the Duchy of Milan. In fact, as early as when Charles VIII launched the First Italian War, Louis XII, who entered Italy with his army, had tried to take over the Duchy of Milan. However, at that time, Charles VIII focused his energy on the Kingdom of Naples and had no energy to care about Milan. Moreover, the theoretical heir to the Duchy of Milan was Louis XII, not Charles VIII himself, so Charles VIII naturally did not care. Not only that, when Louis XII led a few thousand troops to attempt to occupy the Duchy of Milan, he was besieged by 30,000 Milanese troops and had to surrender and run away. From this, we can see that the power of the Duchy of Milan is still very strong. Of course, although the Duchy of Milan can raise 30,000 troops, they are also temporary recruits during wartime. Under normal circumstances, the Duchy of Milan only maintains a standing army of about 10,000. This time, Louis XII was very cunning. He led his troops south under the banner of supporting the Pope and did not openly ask for the Duchy of Milan. As a result, the Duchy of Milan would not be well prepared. When the French army arrived at the gate, it would be too late to recruit enough troops. Thinking of this, Marin immediately said to Maximilian I, "Your Majesty, the Duchy of Milan is in danger." "Ah! The Duchy of Milan? What danger are they in?" "I'm afraid Louis XII is going to seize the Duchy of Milan this time." "How do you know? If it is to support Rome or capture Naples, does Louis XII need to recruit another 10,000 Swiss mercenaries? With the elite French army, 20,000 elite troops are enough to deal with your Majesty's army or attack Naples." However, Louis XII still thinks it is not enough. Obviously, Louis XII also has to deal with the equally powerful Duchy of Milan. The Duchy of Milan? Do you mean that Louis XII will bring up the fact that his father was elected Duke of Milan? Yes, he will definitely do that. But why didn't he bring it up earlier, and instead use "March on Rome" as his slogan? Your Majesty, did you march into Graubünden openly with flags? That's true. I didn't expect Louis XII to be so cunning. Oh, I hope Duke Ludovico can be prepared. No, I have to send someone to notify him. How about I go for a run? You? No need, I have plenty of people under my command. It's like this. I just need to go to Milan to recruit some craftsmen to make weapons and armor for me. You know, the craftsmen in Milan are very famous. Marin's statement was reasonable, but in fact, he was not very interested in making plate armor. He just wanted to hire some skilled craftsmen who were good at making fine steel springs. The speed of making spring flintlock guns is too slow if only the few craftsmen can make fine steel springs. Therefore, Marin plans to recruit more craftsmen who can make springs in Milan, the city of handicrafts. Of course, other types of craftsmen can also be recruited if there is an opportunity. Well, I'll ask you to make this trip. Since Marin volunteered, the emperor thought it was okay. Anyway, Marin had come to his side to cooperate with the acting, and he really helped him treat the wound and told his doctor the secret of treating the wound. Therefore, there was no need for Marin to stay any longer. Therefore, the emperor entrusted him to go to Milan to warn Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan, and let him prepare in advance to guard against the French.